satisfaction of a garden is the testament of a gardener's ingenuity. Welcome back, everyone. This is Classic Homesteading Practices, and today we're going to be talking about the potted garden. The reason why I decided I wanted to start with this kind of gardening style is because of how important I feel it is to talk about it. Again, the reason being is because this is the most versatile way to garden. You're able to do it indoors, outdoors, vertically, spread out, whether it is on a balcony or a patio, dirt, clay, rock, indoors, on wood, carpet. And the reason being is because you're not truly on the wood or carpet in that case, but you are using other instruments or structures to help you to bring your garden together. For instance, one of my favorite ways when I had to do vertical gardening inside, I did not have the outdoor space living in a one-bedroom apartment with my boyfriend, now husband. I did not have a grow light. I only had a window, and I had a reusable baby spinach container that I had poked holes into the bottom, and I was using it to grow baby green lettuces. Now, fortunately for me, there was a windowsill that I was able to prop it on. I put a small cookie sheet underneath of it, and I grew salad greens off of that. And then later, after I felt more confident, I got myself a milk jug. I cut it in half, poked some holes on the bottom, filled it up with dirt, and I put my first cherry tomato in there. Set it up against that same windowsill next to my leafy greens, and I started building my recycled pots garden. And I know it may seem strange to some to think of, oh, well, that's just pots and a couple of things. That's not really a garden. And I'm going to tell you, yes, it is. It is definitely a garden, because you are growing greens. You are growing your tiny garden. In the most able way that you can, you are giving yourself fruits and vegetables. Even though you may not be able to have a grow light, or you may not have a balcony, a patio, anything for you to truly grow to a substantial level, you are still able to grow. Now, for some of you, what I just said may be familiar to you and you've done this before. For others, you may have never thought that was ever necessary for you, which I'm very thankful for you that you never had to do that. I will say this, though, it is the funnest thing ever when you're first picking out recycled materials to try and figure out, what's the best container? Is this going to work to my advantage? Am I able to actually use this? Because you learn creativity, thinking outside of the box, of looking at normal things and saying, you know what, I could use that to grow things in it. There have been many times where you're at a garage sale, and for me personally, I was looking at a bathtub that was for sale. I'm like, I could put an entire strawberry patch in there, or like 2, maybe 3 rows of tomatoes in there. I think I could get it away with that. And the reason is because any vessel, any structure that has drainage in it becomes a pot. Now, of course, there are pots that you can go and get at gardening stores, at Walmart, big box stores like that. They will cost you more, though. And that's not a slight against people who do that. My husband actually got me most of my potted garden supplies from big box stores after we moved out of that place. And I have used those for over 3 years now. All of my supplies for those 3 years have mainly come from big box stores. Now that we live in a new place, in a new area, I definitely had to go back to that because I don't have the connections that I used to, where I could go and get organic topsoil, or I knew farmers in my local area to get compost from. So your means do change with where you go, what your lifestyle is, or what you need. So either way, whether it's the if it's the half-cut milk jug or a beautiful, elaborate, giant pot that you put your dwarf tree in, or your tiny cherry tomato in the windowsill, doing a potted garden is not a disservice. It is a beautiful way to start learning how to garden, or continue gardening when you do not have the availability of a backyard or any kind of space of your own. And the lovely thing too about a potted garden is, again, its versatility. You don't have to do it just indoors. You don't have to do it just in a windowsill. If you have the ability to get grow lights, for example, and you have a closet, or you have an extra room, or if you have a segregated place in your living room that you can dedicate to plants, I can definitely say getting a small bookshelf or getting a wire shelving unit, something that you can do a multi-level tier system on that you can adjust the height with. You can definitely use that as a way to vertical pot grow. And what I mean by vertical growing with pots is basically using your wall space as much as possible instead of surface area on the floor. Being able to use cabinets, drawers, hollow areas of any kind, putting up shelves. That was one thing that I saw that was really beautiful, and in my own home when we get there one day. I would love to make an entire shelving unit that is dedicated to indoor pots, growing leafy greens and tomatoes, and having an indoor arbory. Something else that people really don't think about is that you can grow dwarf trees in large pots inside your home as long as you have a grow light. I have seen people grow coffee trees, avocado trees, cherries, peaches, apples, pears, anything and everything under the moon that is a dwarf tree. You can grow it inside your home if that's what you want. Now, of course, you do need to learn up on your trees. There, of course, is the soil difference between loamy, loose, sandy, clay. All trees grow in different mediums or similar ones, and just make sure you know what your miniature arbory is going to need before you decide to go through with that. Because it's expensive if you go outrageously with it, and that is gardening in its entirety. If you want to go outrageous with potting, go ahead and buy beautiful pots. Buy a set, make it so it looks lovely, do feng shui, make it a part of your home, indoors or outdoors. I've seen people do potted gardens just so they have a lovely area in their homes with regular potted plants, or they go outdoors and they have a patio with these beautiful, intricate flowers and arranged garden beds. But it all depends on what you want from your potted garden, how you want it to look, whether you're going to trellis, whether you're going to vertically grow, and of course, what are the materials that you're going to use with it. I've seen people do cinder blocks, tubs, sinks, bird baths, wood, repurposed tires, though you want to line the inside of those with plastic because they do leach bad chemicals. Tires are not food grade safe, and they do leach into the dirt, which will then be absorbed by your plants, and it can kill the plants, damage the plants, or just put that stuff in your food, and you don't want that. But again, it's a way to do potted gardening. And again, you can do this on balconies, whether you are using your pots in a vertically inclined way. You can do macrame and rope your potted plants onto your balcony, onto the deck itself. For people who are renting, you don't have to worry about putting studs in the wall or holes in your studs, and you don't need to worry about making a mess that you can't clean, as long as you have everything that is prepared for it. So just when you decide to do potted gardening, which I really hope you decide to do, whether or not you have the space to do above gardening or any kind of gardening other than potted, is just make sure that you have all the supplies to keep it a clean area. Also, if you have cats or dogs, just understand that you're going to want your plants away from them. This is why I chose a specific windowsill, and I made sure the cats didn't get on them, because they love sitting they love sitting in the warm dirt during a sunny day, or they just like messing with the plants. And unfortunately, animals don't see whether or not a plant leaf is poisonous, or just the fact that you want it to live. They don't know that they're not allowed to eat it. So my general rule of thumb is, if you have animals, make sure that they can't get to the plants. And if you aren't able to segregate them into another room or a closet, make sure that the area has a tiny little fence system. When I had the window and I had my cats, I made it so they knew specifically that window was off limits. We trained them to not be there. I've also seen people get very creative, and they take those little bath suction cups that you stick hooks onto. You take those suction cups and they would heat glue tiny little plastic fences onto them, and they would interlink them. So you would have 2 suction cups on either side, and then the fence going around that area, and the cat and the dog wouldn't get on them. It was amazing. I could not believe my eyes when I saw that. But again, just be aware, animals do not respect boundaries unless you make them. Alright, so I have talked to you about the different kind of vessels people use to make potted gardens. I've talked to you about indoors, outdoors, vertical, roping off. Also I've seen ceiling potted gardens, which is astonishing in its own way, where I've seen people hook ceiling hooks up, again do macrame ropes with smaller pots, and let their hanging fruits or their hanging flowers just vine down, and they were able to just collect that way, or enjoy their flowers in that way. So let's talk about dirt then. So for potting soil, always use a potting mix. And the reason why I say that is because it is specifically catered to pots. Yes, I would normally say that there's a workaround with this, but to be honest, for beginners, just use potting mix. After you've gotten the hang of gardening and you feel very confident, then start to get into the research of learning how to do your own soil, because if something does go wrong, I don't want you to feel like you did anything wrong, because that's not the case. Usually something just happens, and as a gardener, you can take that pretty hard. I've taken it very hard, and it just makes you discouraged. So I want you to just set yourself up for success. Go ahead and get potting mix for your first try, and let yourself have that easy win. And then afterwards, once you've gotten more confident and you know, like, hey, this is how this works, this is how this plant is supposed to look and grow, this is the moisture it's supposed to have, then start messing around with the soil and teaching yourself what you can do to make soil more inexpensive, make dirt more inexpensive, because dirt is literally, again, if you listen to the intro to dirt episode that I did, it's literally just a mixture of soil, aggregate, and moisture materials. It's a cooking recipe for, plant food. But make sure that you just do that for yourself. Now, the other thing to think about is also how big your pots are going to be. Depending on the plants that you decide to have is dependent on the kind of pots that you're going to need. For most vegetable plants, I usually go for a 1 cubic foot or a 5-gallon pot. I have gone down to a 2-gallon pot, and the biggest difference between 2 and 5 gallons is moisture control and just watering, because for me, I do a lot of fruiting plants like cucumbers, peppers, tomatoes, and they are water heavy plants. So when they grow, every other day they need to be watered in a 2-gallon pot versus a 5-gallon pot. And again, if you want to stay away from really expensive pots, you can just go ahead and get a Home Depot pot or a Home Depot bucket, which is 5 gallons, and then drill holes in the bottom. If you don't have a drill, I'm sorry, people who love their screwdrivers, but use a screwdriver, preferably a Phillips head, and smack it with a hammer. Just get the $2 screwdriver and do it. And then use it to screw up your your hanging hooks and everything else. Oh. So, being able to get the size of the pot for the plant is very important, because you don't want to accidentally stunt your plant. And by stunting, I mean lack of nutrition, lack of room. Your plant may outgrow the pot, and most likely it will, depending on what kind of plant you get. Now, for succulents, on one hand, you can get small pots to start them out with. It's actually very beneficial for them. And then as they grow, make sure that you get a pot to grow with them. So I personally got terracotta pots for my husband when he decided to get into succulents. Reason being is because terracotta wicks water, and you don't want to flood your succulents. You also want to get a loamy soil for them. There is specific soil that is made for desert plants at Home Depot, I know for a fact, but you could always look up a recipe online. Usually it is sand, perlite, and potting soil, which makes it just a very well-draining soil. And then you do need to use a once weekly, usually, plant fertilizer, just to give it the proper nutrients that it needs. While on the other hand, Like I said earlier with trees, you will need to get a 20-gallon, a 50-gallon, sometimes even a 75-gallon pot for your dwarf tree, because it is going to grow from this tiny little seedling into a 6 or 7 foot tall tree. Now, that is definitely okay to have inside your house, but you do need to realize that it will take up a lot of space. So depending on what you want is dependent on the pots you're going to get. Also, when you are doing plants from seedlings, again, just as a PSA or reminder, look on the back of the packet and see what their seed spacing needs to be. And then go online and look at what other people have done and see if they're doing the normal seed spacing, see if it's worked for them, see if they've done something different, because seed spacing usually is row spacing outdoors, where you want to have space in between them so you're able to go through the rows. Like planting corn. I've planted corn that is 6 to 8 inches apart, and they specifically tell you to do it about 12 to 18 inches. I've grown corn in pots, and it works just fine. It just makes a little bit of it makes you a little uncomfortable until you know it works for you. So it was an experiment for me. I decided to try it, and it worked out great. But don't take my word for it. Do it yourself. Try it out. See if you like it. Though know that on average, corn does need about 80 degrees to properly grow and ripen fruit. So don't maybe do it indoors. If you have a balcony, try and get a little greenhouse or plastic structure over them to make a faux greenhouse, and do it on a balcony. That's another thing that you can do as well. If you have a balcony and you decide to do vertical growing on a bookshelf, you can tack up with little compression tacks or nails or staples, something, plastic on it, and make a greenhouse effect. This is for people who are in the north or who want to start a little bit early outdoors, but are afraid of frost. I have used painter's plastic, the stuff that you put on the floor when you're painting your walls. Yes, that's $10 over at the store. It works just fine. Actually works beautifully. I have grown, goodness, what all have I grown from that greenhouse? I built a greenhouse last year and I used timber from a friend, and then I put the plastic around there and I grew corn, tomatillos, tomatoes, peas, beans, watermelon. That was the only way I could grow watermelon up in Alaska, was with a greenhouse, and that's how I was able to do it. And because I was able to do it for such a low price, one, I was really proud that I made a greenhouse by myself, and two, for the fact that a slightly opaque greenhouse worked, let me know that it doesn't, the plastic doesn't have to be see-through. It can be slightly opaque, and it can still get the UV, it can still get the light that it needs in order to grow. So don't be worried about it. Try it out. Get impressed when you're able to grow a watermelon from your balcony. But it looks like we are almost at the 25-minute mark, so I'm going to let you guys go. I hope this was a good instruction for you. It also was just a way of saying, go ahead and do potted gardening. You're able to do it. There's so many different ways to do it. It's not hard to do it. And you can garden indoors. All right. I hope you have a wonderful time, guys, and enjoy gardening this season. It's almost upon us, and it's exciting. All right. Bye, guys.